There we go. So yeah, thank you for everyone for joining, and a happy World Oceans Day. First of all, I'm just going to talk a little bit about who I am and what the Wildlife Trust does. So I'm normally based at the Cardigan Bay Marine Wildlife Centre, which is in Newquay, West Wales. The centre was founded back in 1996 by Steve Hartley, and it was sort of established as a non-profit organisation dedicated to conserving the marine wildlife of Cardigan Bay. It wasn't until April 2015 that we actually became part of the Wildlife Trust of South and West Wales, and we've sort of retained our own sort of individual branding. As you can see from the top of the screen, we are the Wildlife Trust of South and West Wales, but because we have this iconic Cardigan Bay Marine Wildlife Centre logo, we've kept that as well. So essentially, we now deliver the Trust's Living Seas programme of work that's focused on marine research, public awareness, education and marine conservation. And our visitor centre and office in Newquay is the base for our Living Seas team of staff and volunteers. Well, it would normally be our base for our team. And as part of the Wildlife Trust, we rely on donations, grants, membership and profits from our small gift shop here in Newquay to fund a lot of our work. So this is our fantastic office overlooking the seafront in Newquay. This was taken in December 2019, so it just shows that it's a fantastic place to be all year round. Unfortunately, I'm not based in the office at the moment. I'm sat in my home due to everything that's going on. We do have one member of staff that is staffing the office Monday to Friday, but the other two are working from home. So I'm currently working on something called the Living Seas Wales project. It's a collaboration between the Wildlife Trust of South and West Wales and North Wales Wildlife Trust. And between our two trusts, we do cover most of the Welsh coastline. There are some bits that are covered by other trusts, but we cover most of the coast. And this project has been funded by National Heritage Lottery Fund and People's Postcode Lottery. So if any of you play the National Lottery, if any of you play the Postcode Lottery, the chances are that some of your money has gone to fund projects like ours and like the Lost Peatlands project as well. So the aim of our project is to raise awareness of the marine environment here in Wales, educate people and inspire people to love our marine environment just like we do. We're also collecting marine memories, so we're looking at how the marine environment has changed over our lifetime, our parents' lifetimes, our grandparents' lifetimes. So if you do have any interesting marine mammal sightings of things like leatherback turtles, basking sharks, if you're a keen fisher, angler, and you've got some amazing stories, then please do get in touch with us. And then finally, and this is where I really come in, is involving people in marine conservation. So primarily I work with our fantastic team of Living Seas volunteers who take on research, education tasks, data entry, and often, as you can see, hopefully see from this next photo here, they do take on some quite comical roles. This photo was taken last year when we were at an event in the National Botanic Garden of Wales. So as you can see, some of our volunteers are pretty happy to get involved in any way, which includes Andy here dressing up as a merman, which went down really well with a lot of the people visiting our stall then. So that's just a little bit about the project and who we are. What I really wanted to focus on this morning is the Cardigan Bay Big Three. So these are the marine mammals that we are typically like to see in Cardigan Bay. I know a lot of you might not be from this region, but a lot of these species you can see elsewhere in Wales, and I'll talk through that when I go with each species. So first of all, then, we've got the bottlenose dolphins. So there are two main semi-resident populations of bottlenose dolphins in the UK. We happily here in Cardigan Bay have the largest population of bottlenose dolphins, with an estimated 250 to 300 individuals making up that population. The other main population, and sometimes is the one that's more slightly better known, is the population up in the Moroedd Byw in Scotland. And recent studies have actually shown there is quite a small population off Cornwall as well, but that's a really small population. When I say semi-resident, I mean that the population of bottlenose dolphins do spend most of their time in Cardigan Bay, but they do travel to Anglesey and the Isle of Man during the winter months, and we are frequently seeing them travelling further afield during the summer as well. So if you are out and about and you spotted an animal, how would you identify it as a bottlenose dolphin? Well, these are some of the unique identification features of the animal. So our bottlenose dolphins can grow up to about 4 meters in length, weighing up to about 650 kilograms. And we actually have some of the largest bottlenose dolphins in the world. If you're watching documentaries, sometimes the dolphins on there look very sleek, very streamlined. And I'll show you a picture in the next slide, which shows our bottlenose dolphins look slightly more fatter than the ones that you see on those documentaries. They have a rounded forehead with a short beak, so if you can just see my mouse, the beak here of the nose is where they get the name bottlenose from. They are dark grey on top and lighter underneath, and they have this sickle-shaped dorsal fin, which you'll often see there. Young animals are a lot lighter in colour, and if I move on to my next slide here. Here we go. This is a newborn bottlenose dolphin with its mother top notch. So as you can see, this newborn dolphin is a lot lighter in colour, and it has something called fetal folds along the side. So again, if you have a look at my mouse, you can see what are almost these wrinkly lines running down the side of the newborn dolphin here. And essentially they come when they're in the womb. The dolphin is essentially nose and tail touching, so they're quite squashed when they're in the womb, and that's where these lines come from, and they can stay on an individual for up to anywhere around 6 months. So we know bottlenose dolphins can live up to about 50 years, and you can actually age a dolphin, and I will say age a dead dolphin, by cutting through its teeth and counting the rings. So like you would age a tree, this is how you would age a bottlenose dolphin. So bottlenose dolphin feed on fish, squid and crustaceans. They're very opportunistic, and they will adapt their feeding behaviour to local conditions and to different foods. In Cardigan Bay, we know they eat things like salmon, sea bass, trout, garfish, sand eels, herring and mackerel, so a lot of the fish that we would be eating as well. One thing about bottlenose dolphins, they can have anywhere between 80 and 100 teeth. However, they don't actually chew their food, so their teeth are actually used for grabbing, and they then follow the fish hole. So if you can imagine a salmon that you might see on a fish counter in a supermarket, sometimes you do get foreign salmon on it. That's something that these bottlenose dolphins would be following home. And again, just looking at the photo here, this is an adult bottlenose dolphin, and you can see it's quite a dark grey in colour around here. And possibly, depending on how you look at it, they don't look as cute and sort of lovable as the ones you see on documentaries. As I mentioned, they are slightly bigger, slightly fatter than the. So bottlenose dolphins can be seen on their own. They are, however, quite a social species, and they can typically form groups anywhere between 2 to 50 individuals, and on occasions can form larger groups of up to 100. They're very active, as you can see from this photo here, often leaping and lunging out of the water, as well as throwing fish, as we saw in the previous slide, seaweed and jellyfish. They don't eat seaweed or jellyfish, but we have seen them throwing them in the air. They will often approach boats to bow ride, but they will typically avoid boats that are possibly chasing after them, harassing them. They typically avoid that sort of interaction, but they will interact with boats if they are behaving. So We at the centre in Newquay, we often do a lot of photo ID work focused on the population of bottlenose dolphins here. And you can actually identify individual dolphins, and we use nicks, notches, scarring and pigmentation patterns on their dorsal fin. So when I refer to those different things I'm looking at, so this at the very bottom here you can see is quite small. At the top here there's a little dent. Those we would refer to as nicks. As you can see where my mouse is now, this is a slightly larger intrusion into the dorsal fin. That is what we would be referring to as a notch. If I take you to the top dorsal fin here, you can see these white patches, so they are sort of pigmentation patterns. And you should be able to see the individual lines running down the dorsal fin here. Those are what we've referred to as scarring. These have actually come from the teeth of other bottlenose dolphins. We do this all by eye, so we have some very expensive camera equipment which we use from land-based surveys and boat-based surveys to photograph the dorsal fin of bottlenose dolphins. We then take the images, upload them onto computers, and this is all then done by eye. Typically a volunteer will sit and look through these images and try and match them up with our catalogue. So our bottlenose dolphin photo ID catalogue has been running from 2005. So as you can imagine, we've got quite a lot of photos to go through, and this allows us to estimate numbers. Yes, there's 250 to 300 individuals in the Cardigan Bay population. It allows us to monitor population changes, looking at whether they're increasing, for example, and to identify which individuals use Newquay Bay and when. We know that a lot of mother and calves like to use the Newquay Bay where our centre is. That's sort of overlooking the bay that shows earlier on in that photograph. And it allows us to follow their life history, learn more about an individual. When you're looking at females, it allows us to follow their lives, look at how many calves they're having during their lives, and it's a really good way to engage people and inspire people in marine conservation. Everybody loves dolphins, and we have an Adopt a Dolphin scheme which also brings in money for our charitable work and helps us to fund our research work, but it also inspires people, and having that connection with a specific dolphin is great. My favourite dolphin is Jackie. She's a regular visitor to Newquay Bay. She does come in quite close to the harbour wall in Newquay, and you can see her quite clearly from when I've been at the centre for 5 years, and she's one that I've loved the entire time, and she's a good story to tell. So the next animal of the Cardigan Bay that I want to talk to you about is the harbour porpoise, which are also known as puffing pigs. Unfortunately, I've never been close enough to a harbour porpoise to hear breathe, but it apparently sounds like a pig, hence the name puffing pig. And like the bottlenose dolphin, harbour porpoise are actually found all around the UK, and they're the most common cetacean, so common whale, dolphin or porpoise sighting in the UK. Most of the sightings of harbour porpoise typically occur within 6 miles of land, and they're actually the only species of porpoise to be found in European waters. So a lot of people really sort of ask us, how do you tell the difference between a bottlenose dolphin and between a harbour porpoise? And there are a couple of features that really do differentiate the two. So harbour porpoise can only grow up to about 1.7 metres in length. So to put that in perspective, that newborn bottlenose dolphin, that photo that I showed you earlier on of the very cute individual with the fetal folds, they're about 1 metre in length. So a newborn bottlenose dolphin is almost the same size as a fully grown adult harbour porpoise. So the size really is a big indicator of the difference between them. So harbour porpoise also have a rounded forehead with no beak. So if you can follow my mouse on the screen again, you can see from this photo here, unlike the bottlenose dolphin who have the distinct bottle-shaped nose where they get their name from, the harbour porpoise have this rounded forehead with no distinct beak. They look quite odd when you sort of look at the photo for quite a long period of time. You do look at that face area and think that is quite unusual. And bottlenose dolphins have those sort of sickle-shaped dorsal fins. We have in the harbour porpoise, it's a small and triangular-shaped dorsal fin. Again, like the bottlenose dolphins, they're dark on top and pale underneath. But just to recap, the main differences are the size. So bottlenose dolphins, 4 meters versus harbour porpoise, 1.7. Bottlenose dolphins have the bottlenose, whereas harbour porpoise don't have a beak and they have a rounded forehead. Bottlenose dolphins have the sickle-shaped dorsal fin, whereas harbour porpoise have the small triangular-shaped dorsal fin. And I think this next photo, when it does come up, sorry about the program being slightly slow, but this photo really does demonstrate how small a harbour porpoise is. Let's just see. There we go. So this was taken on a boat trip along the coast of Cardigan. As you can see, this is a really small animal. It's quite a flat, calm day. If it was slightly rough, it was slightly more wavy. It is quite difficult to spot a porpoise, whereas bottlenose dolphins you can typically see quite clearly. And again, another difference with the harbour porpoise is that they only live up to about 12 years, so they've got a much shorter lifespan than the bottlenose dolphin. They feed on small schooling fish such as sand eels and sprats. And as the previous photo, it's quite common to see a harbour porpoise on its own. It's not unusual at all. They will form larger social groups, anywhere between sort of 2 to 6 animals. So obviously not as large as those bottlenose dolphin groups we talked about earlier on. As I mentioned, bottlenose dolphins, you'll see them leaping and lunging out of the water. That's not something that you would typically see a harbour porpoise doing. They're quite shy animals. They're typically seen sort of surfacing a few times before disappearing. And unlike the bottlenose dolphin, they would typically avoid boats. However, saying that, this photograph of the mother and calf I've got up on the screen was taken from a boat, but it's something that they would typically avoid. That being said, I'm focusing on our sort of section of Cardigan Bay around Newquay area. I was up on Anglesey in October last year as part of a volunteer weekend we were doing with our colleagues in North Wales Wildlife Trust. And we were watching a group of about 15 porpoise. It's not something that we would normally see in our area. So a lot of these sort of facts and figures I'm talking about are very generalised. Where we do a lot of our research, we're seeing smaller group sizes for shorter periods of time. Whereas when I was up in North Wales on Anglesey, I left after about 45 minutes and the porpoise was still there. So that's quite an extended sighting that we wouldn't typically see where we do a lot of our research with it. So unfortunately, we've talked about how you would tell the difference between a bottlenose dolphin and a porpoise. Unfortunately, where we are in Cardigan Bay, we don't often see porpoise and bottlenose dolphins together at the same time. And that is because bottlenose dolphins attack and kill harbour porpoise. It's something that they do in Cardigan Bay. It's also something that they do up in the Moroedd Byw. And over half of porpoise washed up on beaches in Wales are in fact killed by bottlenose dolphins. We don't actually know why that is. There are a couple of different theories that have been put forward. It could be for resource competition. It could be increased testosterone in male dolphins. We often sorry, totally lost my train of thought there. We often see groups of dolphins doing this activity and we're just really not sure why they do it. It could almost be sort of target practice. A juvenile harbour porpoise is about the same size as a salmon. So again, we've spoken about how bottlenose dolphin eats salmon. It could be a form of practice, but we're really not sure. The final of the Cardigan Bay Big Three then that I'm going to talk about today is the Atlantic grey seal, and more than half of the world's population of Atlantic grey seals is found in the UK. We estimate it's about 5,500 in Cardigan Bay. So if you are anywhere along our coastline, you've got a really good chance of spotting the Atlantic grey seal. We're not 100% sure how many porpoise Cardigan Bay. I heard the number 400, but I'm not really sure. And then, as I mentioned, we've got 250 to 300 bottlenose dolphins. So the Atlantic grey seal is one that you would be quite likely to see in the area. And it's a species that is found all around the coast of Wales, so particularly it could be something that you would be seeing down in South Wales as well. So unlike the bottlenose dolphin and the hubbard porpoise, we can actually tell the difference between male and female Atlantic grey seals just by looking at them. With bottlenose dolphins, because we are able to identify unique individuals, we can monitor them. So if we see an individual repeatedly with a newborn or calf, we would assume that's the female. If we see an animal that has not had a calf for 6 years, we would say that would be a possible male. Unfortunately, we can't confirm that because as in humans, you do have fertile marine animals like dolphins, and unfortunately, you know, you could just be monitoring a dolphin that is not very successful and given birth, but their young hasn't survived to the point where you're watching them with them. So it's quite difficult for us to monitor sort of the genders in dolphins. You can take photos of their stomach. Females have mammary slits, which is where the calves suckle from. So bottlenose dolphins, they're mammals like us. The calves suckle from the mother. Unfortunately, to get a photo of a bottlenose dolphin's belly and a dorsal fin to figure out which dolphin it is quite difficult. So it does make life difficult for us. However, just by looking at the Atlantic grey seals, we can identify the difference between the two genders. So males are darker in colour with light patches. So I don't know if you can see on this photo here where my mouse is hovering now, you've got this white patch around the head area. There's another white patch here, but you can see most of the male is very dark in colour. And it has this arched Roman nose, quite a strange looking face area here. And when I sort of look at it, I almost think that the males facially look quite like rats. Males can grow up to about 3 meters and weigh up to about 250 kilograms. Then on the flip side, you've also got the direct opposite. So when sort of trying to keep it in your mind, just remember they're completely opposite. So females are lighter with dark patches, and I think this photo shows it quite well. You can see the dark splodges here where my mouse is, and then the creamier beige sort of background to it. They also have a small straighter nose, and when I look at this, I sort of bring myself to mind and to think of a dog. So males are dark with light patches, with this arched Roman nose. Females are the opposite. They're light with dark patches with the smaller, straighter nose. And females only grow up to about 2 meters, weigh up to about 180 kilograms. So you've got that size difference then. It is slightly more difficult to tell the difference when they are in the water. This photo of the female here was taken from a boat and she was quite close, so it is easy to identify her as a female. The photo of the male here, he's actually hauled out on some rocks. It is a lot easier to identify them when they're out on land. So males actually in Atlantic only live up to about 25 years, and females can live up to about 65 years. So this is my sort of favourite photos that we have of some of the seals. So this is a female seal, as you can see, hauled out on some rocks. So Atlantic grey seals, again, feed on things like fish, squid, crustaceans, octopus, and they have been known to eat porpoise on occasion. It's not something that we've ever recorded, but it's something that they've seen around the island. They've seen a male seal there eating a porpoise. But that's not sort of a common part of their diet. And when when we're watching Atlantic grey seals, we can be seeing them bobbing up and down in the water. They are quite inquisitive, so they do this quite humorous thing where they'll sort of put their head up above the water and sort of glance at you from side to side, having a good look. But saying that, we also see them hauled out on rocks. As you see, this rock is mostly partially underwater, really, but we will see them hauled out on beaches and on rocks during lower tide. Typically, they obviously prefer beaches where there are less humans around, so less chance of being disturbed then. So Atlantic grey seals pup between late August and October each year. For bottlenose dolphins, they typically give birth around this time of year. They have a gestation period of a year, but it's not really a set time. We've had the individual Jackie I was talking about earlier on. We think she had her latest calf in sort of October, November time, so it's quite fluid. Whereas with the Atlantic grey seals, they have this set breeding season where they pup, and then once the pup has become independent, they'll reproduce again, ready for the next year. With bottlenose dolphins, they'll stay with their mum for anywhere up to about 4 years, and harbour porpoise stay for about 2. So Atlantic grey seal pups, you can obviously identify the difference between the adults and the pups. So they're born with this white fur, which is called langu, and they're nursed by their mothers, and they gain about 2 kilograms in weight a day. Their mum's milk is really fat rich and protein rich, helping them to gain that weight. They typically pup in sort of sheltered caves or on sheltered beaches, because whilst the female is feeding the pup, whilst the pup is suckling, she will continue to go to sea to feed. So the pup is often left alone on the beach while she does that. After about 3 or 4 weeks, then the pup has grown, and the mother will completely abandon the pup to fend for themselves. So they spend only around 2 to 3 weeks with their young. At that point, then they'll typically reproduce again with a male ready for next year. With bottlenose dolphins and harbour porpoise, they stay with their mothers for longer because they have to learn how to forage, how to feed themselves from their mum. Whereas in Atlantic grey seals, it's hardwired into their brain. It's an instinct. They're born with that instinct, which means they don't need to spend time with mum to learn how to do that. Unfortunately, August, September, October time, we do have a lot of negative interactions between humans, dogs, and seal pups. A lot of people don't realise that when the pup is on its own on the beach, the mother is really out at sea feeding herself. It's common behaviour, as I mentioned, but a lot of people will sort of assume that pup has been abandoned. The issue comes if you do touch a seal pup, or your dog touches a seal pup that is waiting for its mother to return. If the mum comes back and it smells wrong, she will prematurely abandon the pup. So what we would say, obviously, is if you do see a seal pup on a beach, please stay 50 metres away. Most of the time I'm not abandoned, my mum is over there. A lot of the time, if you do spend some time watching the sea, you will probably see her swimming around. Typically she will wait for people to leave the beach before she returns to the pup. So again, that's something that we would say, you know, watch from a distance so she does feel safe. And one thing that people often do, and is really, really dangerous, not only to seal pups but to adult seals as well, is a lot of people think that they're stranded because they're on land. As I mentioned, seals spend a lot of their time in the water, but they spend most of their time on land. It's where they sleep, it's where they it's pup, it's where they molt, they shed their fur every year, so that's where they do all these things. And people will often chase them back into the water. They don't want to be in the water. That's why they're on the land. If you were, however, to see a seal pup and it did look injured, for example, possibly, you know, it might have some cuts on it, then please call British Marine Life Rescue or the RSPCA, and they will send somebody out to assess the animal. And we can actually do photo ID work with Atlantic grey seals. As with bottlenose dolphins, we can identify individual seals. And to do this, we use the markings around their head and their neck. So as you can see from this female seal, those splotches, those darker patches on the fur are unique to each individual. And with the males, we use those lighter points, and because they do fight for access to females, they do often have a lot of scars, so we can use those to identify males as well. It's done by eye. There's a computer software that does help as well, but we primarily do this by eye. And again, as with the bottlenose dolphins, we use a mixture of land and boat-based photos. This photo on the side here is taken from a boat. Our seal photo ID work is relatively new compared to the work that we've been doing with bottlenose dolphins. This sort of really started in 2014, so it's quite a new project. And it allows us to monitor breeding sites, it allows us to monitor pupping sites, and to gain a better understanding of seals in Cardigan Bay. Do they travel far? Are they staying in the same sort of area? Do they move on the coastline? Do females come back and pup in the same area, for example? So there's a lot that we can be learning from our photo ID work. So those are the Cardigan Bay big three: the bottlenose dolphin, the harbour porpoise and the Atlantic grey seal, and those are primarily the main marine mammals that we will be seeing in Cardigan Bay, but also in other areas of the coastline. We do have other marine mammals. There are common dolphins. They typically are found in deeper waters, so you would typically have to be on a boat to observe them. We do often have minke whales and fin whales. Typically they prefer the Celtic Deep, which is the deepest part between here and Ireland. So again, it's a boat based sighting, but they are there. But I just wanted to focus on the ones that we see and we monitor quite closely in Cardigan Bay, and the ones that you could possibly see in your local area, or if you do travel further afield when you can. So to finish off the presentation then, I just wanted to talk a little bit about our marine research. So I've told you about the species that we have, but I just wanted to cover a little bit about how we collect data on them and how we monitor them, other than the photo ID projects that we do. So we do dolphin watch surveys, and we do these in partnership with Ceredigion County Council. These are essentially land-based surveys, and during the periods of from March to November, typically every year, we do these surveys anywhere between 8 to 12 hours a day. So typically 9 AM to 5 PM, but when we've got periods of good weather, when I say good weather, I mean just that it's not raining, essentially, which is good weather really here in Wales, we will do surveys from 7 AM to 7 PM every day. We do try and do surveys in the winter months, but in those times we're obviously really dependent on the weather. I'm not sure if any of you have ever visited Newquay, but in the winter months when the sea's quite rough, our dolphin watching point is on the harbour wall, as you can see this photo here. In the winter, the water often comes over the harbour wall when it's particularly rough, so it's not ideal conditions for our volunteers to be out there, but we do try and keep research going on. When they do these land-based surveys, as you can see by our fantastic volunteer here, Dave, we are monitoring the environmental conditions, so recording just what the general weather is, the wind direction, what the sea state is. When we refer to sea state, we just mean how calm or how rough the sea is. We're monitoring any marine mammal sightings, so of the Cardigan Bay big three, as I talked about. At this time of year, we could be lucky enough to have sightings of sunfish or basking sharks. We also monitor those as well. And we also look at boat traffic, so we monitor the levels of boat traffic and we monitor the effect boat traffic has on marine mammals. A lot of people think about pollution, plastic pollution, or boat traffic causing physical problems, so hitting a marine mammal. The main problem that we have is noise disturbance produced by the boat traffic and harassment of animals where boats are chasing animals, which can really impact their behaviour. So that's something that we monitor through our land-based surveys. We focus on points in Newquay and in Aberystwyth, and Ceredigion County Council and the SAC officer focuses on other points along the Ceredigion coastline. So there's actually 6 survey sites. So it's not just us contributing to this project, but we sort of produce around 88% of the data in this project. So we don't just do land-based work, we also do boat-based surveys in partnership with Dolphin Survey Boat Trips, who were the first sort of eco-tourism boat trip in Newquay. They're also run and owned by Steve Hartley, who founded the centre back in 1996. Our boat-based surveys are limited to the period of March and November and are weather dependent. They don't sort of go ahead if the sea's too rough, and our researchers, so as you can see our volunteer Faye on board here, and members of the public join those surveys. So they are research surveys funded by members of the public. Our volunteers are there to collect the data I'm about to talk about. We're also there to answer questions that people have during the trips. So again, we're monitoring the environmental conditions, marine mammal sightings, and other sightings of marine megafauna. As I said, basking sharks, sunfish. We have previously on one occasion seen a thresher shark on a survey. We have recorded other more unusual bird sightings. So last year there were a couple of surveys where we saw puffins, which is really unusual. They don't normally travel as far up as where we were to see puffins on those trips. And trips can vary in length, anywhere between 2 hours, 4 hours or 8 hours. And on the 8-hour trips, they're sort of more research focused. So whilst we're collecting all of this data, our Live and Seas research team will also be collecting photo ID data, acoustic data, so we drop a hydrophone down into the sea to listen to the recordings of dolphin and porpoise echolocation and communication signals. And we also try to collect dolphin poo, which seems easier on paper than it is in real life. We've got a big net where if dolphins do approach the boat, we try and pick up the poo. And we're doing that to look at how dolphins are in the area are feeding. As I mentioned earlier on, we know they feed on things like salmon, mackerel, for example. But what we want to know is there a particular fish species that makes up the majority of their diet? If so, that's a species that we obviously want to work to protect and conserve, because they're a major part of the bottlenose dolphin's diet. So why is our sort of research work so important? Well, I always say you can't protect what we don't understand. While our research work does allow us to monitor the population, look at any changes, it also helps us to increase our understanding of populations of these marine mammals in Cardigan Bay. Through our research work and our survey work, we often post sightings updates on our website and social media, a lot of photos and videos, and through that we're raising awareness of the fantastic marine life we have here in Cardigan Bay. I'm originally from South Wales, I'm originally from Cwmbran near Newport, and when I first came to Newquay, a lot of people said to me, well, why are you going there? We know you're interested in dolphins. So these are Welsh people that didn't realise that we have the largest population of bottlenose dolphins here in Wales, and if people don't know that, they're not going to fight to protect that. So it's really important for us to raise awareness within Wales and within the wider the UK. We have people from Brazil, America that view our sightings as well, so it is reaching a worldwide audience. And through this, we're inspiring people to become involved in marine conservation, whether that's by actively volunteering with us or making simple changes at home, for example, reducing their use of plastic, perhaps doing beach cleans at their local beach, or even something as simple as signing a petition or sharing a message, for example, that we want to put out there. So that is a lot of the work that we would typically do. I just wanted to finish off with a little update of what we are actually doing at the moment. So June is primarily our midway through our season. It sort of starts in mid-March. We would be doing surveys daily, boat trips when we could. Our visitor centre in here would be open educating people. We'd also be running events and activities, so things like rock pooling, wildlife walks, become a dolphin detective, more aimed at children and families, and we'd also be attending a range of external events. This event on the last summer. Obviously, a lot of that's not possible. Unfortunately, all of our research work this year has currently been put on hold. We aren't able to do land-based surveys. We were possibly hoping, as things were starting to ease, that we would be able to, but unfortunately, over the past couple of weeks, when it has been certainly down the harbour wall, it's really difficult for our volunteer to be able to social distance from the public. So that's not something we wouldn't be able to do. With boat-based surveys, again, it would be very difficult for staff and volunteers to socially distance on those, hence why all our research work is on hold. Obviously, a lot of our community engagement and education research is also on hold. We say on hold, it has been moved online. We're doing a lot of short videos that we would normally sort of be presenting in some of our sessions, and so these can be found on our website and on our social media. And a really big hit for us is the visitor centre closing. Our visitor centre is home to our gift shop, which obviously produces a lot of income for the charity, and we rely a lot on the donations from the gift shop. So it isn't just the sort of marine-based work that has been affected by COVID-19. So for the wildlife of South and West Wales as a whole, over 50% of our income comes from tourism-related activities, whether that's our visitor centres, cafes, gift shops, holiday accommodation, landing on Skoma, which does now mean we have a gap in our budget of more than £500,000. So if you are able to donate, join, or just share our story in order to ensure that our trust has a future, then we would really appreciate that. And you can support us or find out not only our marine work and our terrestrial data work as well by visiting that website, which is www.welshwildlife.org. We're also on Instagram and Facebook as well if you're wanting to follow us and our updates on social media. So thank you very much. I think I'll have a look through some of the questions now in the chat. So bear with me while I just go through and have a look.
I can read some out to you, Laura. I've got one here from Tristan. He's 8 years old and he would like to know, what is the diet of a porpoise?
Oh, brilliant. So porpoise feed on things like sand eels, herring, sprat. So not fish that we would typically be eating. So you might things like salmon and mackerel, which the bottlenose dolphin eat, are probably something you've eaten. But the porpoise like smaller fish.
Brilliant, thank you. And hello to Tristan too. I love that we have an 8-year-old at our talk today. That's brilliant. I hope Laura's inspired.
Thank you.
We've got one from Sky. Why do we have more than half the world's population of Atlantic grey seals in the UK? Is this based on their natural range or on other factors like hunting, pollution or habitat destruction?
As far as I'm aware, it's based on natural, but that is something I will go back and have a double check of that. But as far as I'm aware, that's quite typical.
The next, there's two, Amy and Stuart are kind of similar, so I'll read them out at the same time. So Amy's asked, do you take volunteers or interns for surveys? And Stuart has asked, how can I get involved with photo ID work with bottlenose dolphins?
So we do typically have volunteers that are based not only in Newquay but throughout South and West Wales. So if you are interested in volunteering, you can just email me at volunteer@cbmwc.org. Obviously, a lot of the stuff that we're doing at the moment is online based, so I'm just providing a lot of training with volunteers, helping with social media posts, perhaps writing a little blog about what their best marine is, or recording videos on why they love marine wildlife, for example. Hopefully then going forward, volunteers would help with our survey work. So this morning is very marine mammal focused. We do rocky shore surveys, so looking at shore life living in our sort of rock pools. So there's a lot to get involved with. So to get in touch, I think is that both of the questions. And with photo ID, again, it's something that we're possibly now looking at putting more of that online. So our office is quite small, so if staff are going back into the office, it's not something we can take volunteers on. So we're looking at getting some of that done on our sort of online platforms as well. So we'll keep you up to date in how you can get involved with the photo ID work.
Brilliant, thank you. Next question, can I ask, how are the populations of the big three doing in Wales?
So with porpoise, as I mentioned, because we don't have that figure, we're not 100% sure about still looking to be doing quite well. My colleagues up in North Wales Wildlife Trust are definitely seeing more increased seal sightings. Bottlenose dolphins have always been particularly stable. What we are finding over the past couple of years is we sort of focused in a specific area. They are having more in Pembrokeshire and more in North Wales during the summer months, which wasn't something that typically happened before. So it has changed in that you're seeing them in places you wouldn't typically see them. Not 100% sure how that's looking at numbers. We've got a couple of PhD students working on that data at the moment, so hopefully we'll have more updates soon. But yeah, we're seeing them in a lot more different places than we would be normally.
Brilliant, that's good news. Oh, I've got next one on here. Please, could you post Laura's email address here? Would you mind popping in the chat for me?
Yeah, I will do that now.
Do we have any other questions, folks? Feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question if you'd rather not type.
Obviously, if you do think of a question afterwards that you wish you asked, just feel free to drop me an email. If you don't know the email that I'm now, we're on social media and you've got our website, so get in touch and it'll eventually filter down to me.
Brilliant. Well, that seems like all the questions we have. So yeah, if anyone has any questions for Laura, get in touch that way, or you can contact us at the Peatlands and we can pass it on as well for you. Thank you so much for coming in today. Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed this talk, learned so much. Feel free to unmute yourself to say thank you if you want to. Yeah, brilliant talk. Thank you so much. And a lot of the Wildlife Trust staff are furloughed at the moment, so Laura's time is very precious. So thank you very much for making the time to deliver this for us today. Brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And yeah, if you do want to get in touch, then please do. And happy World Oceans Day.